Hi there, guys. It's Archie and back for the ADHD Care Podcast. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for joining us for another edition of this podcast. Today, I want us to focus on what actually happens after someone receives an ADHD diagnosis. Just wanted to think about the emotions that it can stir up, the challenges of making sense of that, and the role that therapy plays in helping people move forward with clarity and self-compassion. So hopefully this conversation will guide us through the important conversations around post-diagnosis. And that could be for a young person, a parent with a child, a young person going through that process, or even the adult themselves receiving a diagnosis of ADHD. So I'm pleased to say I'm joined by Maddie Patchett, who is a registered psychotherapist who has a special interest in ADHD and neurodiversity. So Maddie is based in Surrey. She supports adults going through a wide range of challenges from ADHD, anxiety, depression. She's passionate about helping people understand how their past experiences shape their present, and about creating a safe and supportive space for clients to explore life before and after the diagnosis. So let's bring Maddie on.
Hello,
Hello.
Archie.
Hi, Maddie. How are
Hi,
you? How are
I'm
you?
good. How are you?
Not bad, thanks. Good to see you.
You too. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Just having a crazy busy morning, but all good now.
Good.
So yeah, here we are. So welcome to our podcast. Through to have you, and particularly what we're discussing today on post-diagnosis and everything that comes with that. So I think you're the person to be talking to about this.
I hope so. I hope I have some good things to bring.
Yeah, so for our listeners, I've sort of done a kind of quick introduction just to introduce who you are and what you do. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yep. So
Yeah.
I'm a psychodynamic psychotherapist, and I run my clinic in Guildford. And we've got two other therapists in there at the moment that one is also psychodynamic and the other one is EMDR and CBT. So we've got a broad range of different therapies in there. But I also have a particular interest in neurodiversity and ADHD, and so offer clients space to talk about pre-diagnosis, post-diagnosis, not sure, but thinking about it as kind of a separate, different route to the psychodynamic therapy. So it's adults that I mainly deal with. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Excellent. So we might as well just go straight into it.
Let's do it.
um, Thinking about post-diagnosis, because that's something that I often see and come across in the clinic, where people come from different journeys, or when they receive the diagnosis. Obviously, in this case, I know you specialize mainly with adults.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so for someone before they receive a diagnosis, obviously they go through emotions actually coming through to being assessed in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Some people come with high, expectations. They kind of know, okay, I've got ADHD. Chances are because they've either what they've read or what they've been told by the professional, or they can relate to, there could be a parent, there could be, if
Yeah.
their partner could have the same traits. And then you have some people that this is quite a new field for them.
Yeah.
So ADHD is a whole different mindset to them. So that's kind of some of the paths. And I know other people come from different journeys and stuff. But what are some of the common concerns that you often hear when people come through to see you after they receive the diagnosis?
There's some real mixed emotions. So one of the most common one post having a diagnosis is confusion. So it's really helpful having that diagnosis, but without unpacking what it means to them now and what life was like before the diagnosis, it can feel quite confusing to try and navigate a future with all this new information about themselves. So there's lots of different emotions that come from it, and sometimes resentment can come up around people that are around them in childhood that maybe didn't spot or understand the traits, the symptoms of ADHD. And so having a diagnosis can be a huge relief, but it can also bring up these questions of, well, why did nobody really see me? Why did nobody really see what was going on for me? Where were you? What was going on with you? And so that then brings up other things to reflect on and think about, how do they now fit within their family, and trying to talk about it with certain family members. And when certain family members don't really understand it and shy away from this kind of reflective work, it can almost reinforce that original isolation that that person was experiencing before a diagnosis, of almost thoughts of, see, that I've got this diagnosis and people still don't want to understand me. They still don't get me, even though I've got this. So there's quite a lot that can come from a diagnosis, depending obviously on the person's experiences and backgrounds. But typically there are difficult feelings that come up with the diagnosis of why were you not able to understand me? Where were you? Kind of thing.
And I suppose there's shame, self-doubt as well that plays a part in all of this. Stigma, we have to mention about stigma, because obviously, certainly, particularly for adults, traditionally, some people might associate ADHD as a childhood condition, not necessarily see, in adult being seen as having ADHD. And I've heard some people saying, like, some of my family members saying, like, oh, you don't have ADHD. Like, come on, you can do this, you can do that.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, it can be really debilitating, and it's almost like what I was saying, that it can be confirmation bias when you get this diagnosis and then family members or friends around them, they don't really get it, they don't understand the detail around it, and so it can leave that person feeling even more shameful, closed off, isolated. And there is huge stigma around ADHD. And a lot of it is just really misunderstood, and it's so infuriating, whether we're talking about schools and we're talking about 5-year-olds, or we're talking about 65-year-olds trying to then open up with friends or family members. There's such a lack of understanding about it. It is really difficult, which is why talking therapy, post-diagnosis, pre-diagnosis, can be so helpful, because ADHD is a relational condition. So exploring how we relate to ourselves with this condition, understanding about it post-diagnosis, is so important to try and navigate what does this mean to us and the people who we relate to that are around us. I think there's a big focus on the medication and getting that kind of support, which can obviously have lots of benefits for people, but without really exploring the relational side of it, I think people can get quite lost and quite deflated with, well, this pill hasn't really changed anything for me. It's helped a bit, but I still feel really alone in it. And so that's what I kind of try to help people navigate and build a relationship with themselves that really comes from a place of better understanding.
I agree. I think as you're talking there, I was actually thinking in my clinic, going through this process where we're giving a diagnosis to someone and allow for them to sit with what we just told them. And sometimes that takes a while. For some people, it's okay, it didn't come as a surprise, but what we were saying, that even if it didn't come as a surprise, to receive that confirmation, it's something that requires a lot of time to process and digest it and see how it applies to you and see what your life means now going forward with this diagnosis. Because sometimes there's this rush to say, okay, what we're going to do next, and we need to fix this, and without actually processing and understanding and coming to terms with it.
Yeah, and I think all of those traits are so typical of ADHD people. Of, great, now what's next? What do I do? How do I get on? What are we going to do? Let's go and fix it. And to actually sit and pause and reflect is quite an uncomfortable spot in general, I find, for people that have ADHD. They kind of need to be really encouraged to pause and reflect. And then when they can get into that headspace, they are real deep thinkers. So it's really important.
So how do you help people to process what we're talking about right now? What's your role?
I guess just giving them space to, like we've said, reflect and think about in the moment, what does this mean for them? How have they seen it impact people around them, whether it's partners or maybe even their own children or parents? And often or not, there's a real mixed bag of some people in their lives understanding and trying to support, trying their best, and then some really not, aren't asking any questions or exploring it. Or what was it like for you having it growing up? What is it like now? There seems to be almost a bit of an avoidance around talking about this ADHD diagnosis, in my experience, from people that have come and see me, around people in their lives, family members. They don't really know how to go about asking questions, and I think it comes down to a lack of, a lack of understanding, the stigma we spoke about. It seems such early days in understanding as a society what this condition is and what it means. I don't know if you find that as well in your practice.
Yeah. As you're talking again, I'm just sort of thinking, I think stigma plays a huge part, like what you're saying, where it comes to not just with close family members, friends, employers as well.
Yeah.
Um, some people feeling a bit having reservations to open up to your boss and tell them that I've been diagnosed with this, and people worry about the implications that might have in terms of are they going to be looked differently? Are they going to be seen as you're not fit for this position, for this job, or you're not coping, or are they going to be seen as I don't know. That's basically what it's a shame. That's just, and that's I
Yeah.
suppose that also prevents people from actually seeking a diagnosis in the first place,
Yeah.
even though they're struggling.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then you
Yeah,
have
and it's
yeah,
difficult
go
because
on.
that again feeds into that isolation bit, that confirmation bias. Obviously, I've got this, and the external environment doesn't support me so well with it, which is why I think coming in, talking it through, getting this kind of support, not just medication, but relational, can really help strengthen an individual's confidence and understanding of themselves, which can help break down all of these barriers and all of this stigma. But I guess on a different topic, a different podcast episode, is how do we go about breaking down stigma? How do we actually go about getting society to understand more about what is this, and what does it mean for people, families? Because the individual being diagnosed, they don't work in a vacuum. They're part of a system. We are relational beings, and so trying to understand and unwrap all of that is so important to the health and the well-being of that person.
Yeah, and sometimes the emphasis and focus ends up being around how to explain it to other people rather than how for me to come to terms with it. So
Yeah, yeah,
you're focusing around
yeah,
the stigma,
yeah,
and you're worried about, oh gosh, people are going to look at me differently, or I wonder how my family are going to look at me or say,
yeah,
um, rather than you actually coming to terms and sitting with it. On the
yeah,
other flip side of the coin, I'm just trying to think from the individual basis, the grief that it can also trigger, because some people can look back and go, gosh, if I had had this diagnosis when I was younger, maybe I would have got, better grades at school. I probably would have gone
yeah,
into a better career, or I would have, kept this job or relationship that failed in the past. And I'm sure you come across this a lot when people start to look back, and sometimes that can stir a lot of anxiety and sadness and anger and frustration,
yeah, yeah,
rather than, yeah.
yeah, absolutely. All of those things come up. And I guess what I try and we give the space to talk about those kinds of things, those really triggering events. A lot of trauma comes up, especially if clients have used drugs or alcohol, which is really common as a way of self-soothing this condition, not understanding what was going on. And often trauma is associated with that kind of addiction behavior. But giving them the space to reflect on those traumas, and then trying to bring it back to the present of where they are now, and learning from the experiences they've gone through and highlighting, but look at where you are now. Look at everything that you've understood about yourself. Look at where you are. You're in this room. We're trying to get a really deep understanding of where you've come from and where you are now. And that's one of the biggest things I think an individual can do, is get to this really vulnerable place of wanting to understand themselves in a much deeper level. So I try and highlight their resilience and strength. And it's often, in fact, in all cases that I've had, people coming in with ADHD diagnosis, or they've got one, they have gone through some really difficult times. Whether they've had specific traumas or not, they've had to navigate a world that isn't built for neurospicy people. They've been up against it from when they were 3, whatever age. And so I really try and highlight their resilience, their power that they have, and try and get them to integrate that with their traumas and things that they've experienced.
Well, you just kind of answered my next question, really, in terms of how does psychodynamic therapy or approach help clients reframe the past experiences and rebuild kind of self-understanding of the diagnosis?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think as a therapist, psychodynamic thinking is always going to be my foundation, my modality, my way of thinking in the room with clients. And I think for adults, as I'm working with adults, it's so helpful to look back and try and understand what was going on for them, whether it's been a trauma, a significant event, or just generally trying to make sense of what life was like for them growing up, and to then bring it into the present moment to try and integrate these different parts of their lives and make sense of it to get a deeper understanding. But the psychodynamic bit is it's a relational approach. So it's the dynamic between me and the client in the room. What is going on for both of us in this room now? How are we relating to each other? And that can be such an insightful tool to understand what is the internal world like for that client. What has it been like for them growing up and now? And so sometimes it's quite live and in the moment, the work. And some people love it. Some people prefer more of a CBT kind of thing where they want to be given specific homework and actions. But in terms of ADHD, which I believe you need to get a deep understanding of yourself post a diagnosis, this kind of therapy is so helpful because of all of those things.
Mm. It's a shame it's not readily available, as you know. Like, there's not many Maddies out there that we can just reach out and say, so I'm glad that when we connected, certainly, and I could see the role that this plays.
Yeah.
There's a lot of emphasis. I'm not trying to put down all the other types of modalities like CBT or coaching, all these kind of different types of coaching, but sometimes it can feel overwhelming for clients as well to know, okay, I feel I want to speak to someone about what I've been through and what I'm going through from a non-medical medication point of view, but they don't know what route to take.
Yeah.
They wouldn't know whether to approach you with your approach or whether to go to a coach, whether to go to a CBT therapist. So, just trying to get your voices out there. And from what you know, are there many kind of psychotherapists kind of doing what you're doing in the neurodiversity field?
I haven't come across any others, if I'm honest. There's coaches. There's kind of ADHD coaches, which I believe are more of helping with day-to-day functioning of these things can help you get really organized and, dealing with daily tasks. Whereas, what I'm doing is trying to help people navigate and understand what this news means for them, or what it might mean for them if they decide to get a diagnosis. Some people are pretty convinced they have it, but they're not quite ready to get a diagnosis, or they feel they're managing life fine without having a diagnosis. What's the point? And so then we will kind of look into all of that. But absolutely, it's a shame it's not readily available. I mean, the NHS, they don't offer talking therapy as a first line treatment with the medication, or if they do, it might be 3 sessions. you can't really go through your life's journey and experiences in 3 sessions and then never see that therapist again. So it is a real shame, and it's something we're trying to highlight and advertise and encourage people to come if they've got, they want to talk through what does it mean for them.
As you're talking, I'm just thinking how I know also there's so many psychotherapists out there, but how important is it to see a psychotherapist who has understanding of neurodiversity and understands how people with autism, ADHD, how their brains work? How important is that?
Well, I'd say from my personal experience, because it is a relational process, I think somebody having a good understanding, personal experience of it can be more authentic and understanding in the room. That's not to say I don't have any experience of speaking through therapy with somebody that doesn't have neurodiversity, so I can't really say what it would be like, but I think to have that knowledge and experience and understanding of how it actually manifests, it just connects on a much deeper level with the client in the room.
Yeah. That's usually something that sometimes people say that it's all well and good to see a counselor, a therapist, but they didn't seem to understand how my brain works. I'm sure lots of people can relate with me just saying what I'm saying there.
Yeah.
And so I'm emphasizing on that point in terms of like finding the right person, therapist, who not necessarily has only just walked through the same shoes as you, but who has a special interest in this field, like neurodiversity, like yourself.
Yeah.
There's not many out there, and I think that's where some clients struggle to find the right person to see, and they can receive that type of support from that person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, which goes to my point about there's not many of you out there. I can sort of say to clients, yep, go to this person and go to that person. So yeah, I mean, it's good. I'm hoping that it's going to grow.
Same.
So,
I mean, that would be great. But it is a real tricky one because with psychodynamic therapy, it's very much about trying not to self-disclose or being very conscious about when you self-disclose as a therapist. So I work in a little bit of a different way. If somebody is coming in and in the initial consultation, they are seeking out support specifically for ADHD, then it's a slightly different approach where there will be more self-disclosure because it helps that client in the room, whereby I can really get it. I really understand it. All the different nuances of the symptoms where lots of clients think that they're crazy or they're alone in the world, that they're the only one that finds supermarkets the most devastatingly awful places to go in the world for these reasons. Bringing I can relate, I get it, you're not alone, I've heard this 1,000 times. It can be life-changing for somebody in that moment, but oh my God, really? And so many times clients have responded with, I thought it was just me struggling with this. I can't actually believe that you've heard this before. And they're so shocked when I'm sitting in front of them and saying, you're really not alone in this, because it can be quite an isolating condition. And that's what I'm really trying to break down, that they are not alone in this. Even if their external world feels quite isolating and people don't get it, what I'm trying to get them to understand is that other people do get it, and they need to build this relationship up internally with themselves, which is where kind of it takes a longer period of time than something like CBT.
yeah, exactly. I mean, you kind of taking it to kind of a sort of on a personal level there. I'm not sure how comfortable you are in terms of like opening up and talking to us about your own personal journey in this kind of ADHD world. So,
Yeah.
do you want to let us know in terms of like your own kind of personal journey with ADHD and how we came
Yeah.
about to where you are now?
So it came about having my second child. So I have 2 children who are really close in age, and I think it was having my second child, I started to realize how I was struggling with the most basic of things. But being a mom with two small children, I just put it down to, that's the environment. This is motherhood. It's crazy. I haven't slept for years. Everything's really difficult. But as he started to get older, I started to notice things about him, which I could see in myself. And I think it was both of us together interact. And I'm talking, he's like 1 or 2, 3 at this point. And then I started to look into it more. Things would come up at work of clients that years ago would mention they had ADHD and they struggled with these things. And I remember thinking, wow, I have that as well. Like, I find that. And so then went into big research mode, and then went and got a diagnosis, and it all made sense. And then it kind of triggered this almost a little bit of rage, where I didn't want anybody else to be in that, isolation of thinking, no, this is just how I am. It must just be me. And that is quite chronic in patients with ADHD, that it's just me, there's hopelessness, there's nothing that can be done. But actually there's lots that can be done in terms of support. So it was motherhood, in answer to your question. Things that were going on that made me think, and then looking back in my younger years, it all made so much sense.
And thanks for sharing your personal story there. And I'm sure it resonates with a lot of people out there who are listening. Where are you now with your journey, your ADHD journey?
I feel very confident about it. It's been really helpful in terms of navigating the future, navigating family life. And I'm obviously really passionate about it. Hence, I've kind of taken this sidestep with my work, and I can really relate to clients about it, especially adults getting diagnosed in later life, but also parents who have children with it. And this is a whole different ball game, a whole different podcast series of schools, how children are supported, how their symptoms are dealt with, how they're identified. And I have a lot of parents that come and see me that don't necessarily think they have ADHD, but it's how they cope or are not coping with a child that has it. And that's something else I can really relate to, is my child has it. And so many parents have to be such a fierce warrior for their children to just get the support in school, to not be shamed, to not be excluded, to not be bullied. And also for that parent on the school gates, for them to not be excluded or shamed or not included in parties because people think they've got the naughty child that's going to be hitting everybody. So I have a lot of parents that come that want to try and unravel and get some space of, this is what's going on, and it's exhausting. And people come and say, this has nearly broken me. This is one of the hardest things, is trying to understand and navigate and support my child that has ADHD. And I really don't think it should be that hard. And this is that whole, coming back to the stigma in society, the lack of support. It's an absolute minefield. And I don't think it should be this hard.
I mean, the lack of support, we can spend a whole podcast and another 2 or 3 episodes talking about that. Honestly, the lack of it.
We need a mini series of the educational system, and
yeah, I know.
It's so archaic, Archie. It just is mind blowing how we still have a single track minded approach of teaching children. We don't all have the same brain. It's as simple as that. So this approach is just so irrelevant. It's not helpful to anybody. And yet we keep pushing it, keep using it. And it's a whole nother episode.
I think that one, definitely, I'm keen to bring you back on there, because I've got my own views on that one as well. And I'll be gladly happy to share that with you, and for us to literally have a conversation. I know we discussed it previously when we met off podcast. And I think it's something that lots of parents are going through out there, struggling with the education system and stuff. So I mean, coming back to the whole post-diagnosis, if you think about the National Health Service, we know obviously they're under a lot of pressure. There's long waiting lists, and people taking years and years to be seen for an assessment, let alone to actually get the treatment that comes post-diagnosis. So, and
Yeah.
we know that a lot of people usually you get the diagnosis that's on a mainstream level anyway, and then okay, here's your diagnosis, here's your report. If you want to pursue medication, is the option for that. You might actually need to wait for another waiting list to be seen for that treatment, but that's it. You might be, if you're lucky enough, you'll be signposted to some organization that has resources and stuff online, but there isn't anything else that readily available for people
Yeah.
post-diagnosis, which is the shame.
Yeah.
So
They're just
yeah,
left to it, trying to navigate and understand, okay,
yeah,
what is this? Am I supposed to feel really different now I've got this medication? And just going back onto the NHS, through my work, I've heard that some NHS surgeries, if people have gone down the private route and they've paid for an assessment and they have medication and then they have a shared care agreement, some NHS surgeries are now stopping the shared care agreements. So when people have saved up for this really expensive diagnosis, it's really important for them. They're not waiting the 3 to 7 years on the NHS. They go about it and fight for themselves and go and do it the private way. And now the NHS, once the shared care plan is agreed, are turning around and saying, we're no longer going to be accepting these. It's too much. It's too much resource. It's too much admin time for us to manage. And so it's so debilitating now on both
yeah,
ends, private
yeah.
and NHS. It just seems to be getting worse, which is a
Yeah,
little bit of a negative tone, isn't it?
I know. Financially draining. Let's not mention the financial implications that has for someone who, as you said, who was able to just afford just to get the assessment and let alone even start the treatment, which is very costly,
Yeah.
to be then told by the GP that you can't carry on this. Well, they can't take over the prescribing because, and
They don't have
sometimes
the resource.
they don't have the resource, and it's a double-edged sword. I kind of get where, particularly from a National Health Service point of
Mm-hmm.
view, I think they've been hit with something that they didn't expect with the influx of referrals and people coming and getting this diagnosis, um, which is great in a way because now you have more private services setting up
Yeah.
to be able to deal with this pressure that the NHS can't even cope with. But what that then doing is, as you said, at the end of the spectrum, you're having people that have gone through the process of being diagnosed, having the treatment, doing well on their medication treatment, but not being taken over by their GP because
Yeah.
of the influx of referrals that are come through that the GPs can't cope with. And
Yeah.
sometimes there's financial reasons behind it. I do not know, but I think the whole system it needs to be revamped, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole nother podcast. We can focus on that yet again.
It
We've already
is.
created like 6 podcasts on
I
this already.
know. There's so many
Episodes.
avenues out of here.
There is.
Tangents.
Yeah, I mean, I get it from a parenting point of view. The frustration. Imagine you being as a parent, you've been going through your own journey with your ADHD, and yet you want to be the advocate for your son or your daughter, going through the system, and you have these battles, and you're trying to support yourself. It's a
Yeah.
lot.
It is really, really frustrating. And there's some clients that I've seen, and their symptoms can be when they're the more intense end of the spectrum, where things are really difficult on a daily basis, like getting out of bed, getting any kind of motivation. It's really worrying how GPs, this National Health Service, is turning around and saying, sorry, but we're just not going to put the resource into this right now. So yeah, it is a real concern, and it needs to be
Yeah.
completely revamped.
Mm. I mean, I think we've kind of touched on what I was about to ask you in terms of like from your perspective, what's missing in the wider kind of ADHD landscape when it comes to post-diagnostic support. I think we've touched on that.
What's
Is that
missing?
what's missing? Yeah,
Yeah, I just think more accessible talking therapy and readily available medication support, whether that is private or NHS. I mean, keeping your medication down the private route can be up to like £120, £160 a month to receive your medication through your private pharmacist or something, and people just can't afford that. So yeah, there's so much that needs to change to make things more accessible and more supportive for people post-diagnosis. But I think being able to start by trying to understand yourself now you have this new information about yourself is a really central point to improving your well-being. Without that connection to yourself and giving yourself that space and really giving yourself a break, that it's not my fault these things are hard, it's not my fault that I excel in these creative ways, can be really, really helpful for clients. But there also needs to be that wider support in society, whether it's coming from a school, a GP, or the lack of stigma.
Do you have any, I'm just trying to think of we can call it a success story, like of a client that you've worked with who's come to you, just been recently diagnosed. They want to discuss with you about their past experience, just everything. So, and what support you are able to offer them, just to get our listeners to see how important what we're discussing is, particularly with your approach.
I think it's just that understanding of themselves, which I've said this sentence probably about 50 times in this podcast, but just to be able to sit with that and really connect with who am I and who am I in relation to those around me, what's gone on, unpacking the past and feeling more confident in their sense of self going forward. You can see how clients slowly shift over time as the sessions go on, where they feel more secure in who they are, and that external validation, that power starts to diminish, and the internal validation starts to increase. And that's such a wonderful thing to see in the room happening, and hearing these different anecdotes that they bring week by week of they can feel the changes happening within them. But I'd say also pre-diagnosis as well, when clients come in and they're not sure, or they may not even be thinking about any kind of neurodiversity, but slowly and very carefully exploring things subtly. I've had a number of clients where they've then gone on to get a diagnosis, they have it, and their life has been completely transformed. And that's so powerful as well.
And that's the important thing there to mention, that you work with clients that haven't received the diagnosis as well, just to point that out. So it doesn't have to be like you have to have a diagnosis for you to work with them.
No, not at all. I mean, the thing is with undiagnosed ADHD, a lot of people may have used substances to self-soothe. So with that kind of use of alcohol or drugs, there can be some pretty big events that may have happened in their life, whether it's being involved in the law, crime, or whatever else. And they may come into therapy wanting to unpack what happened, what went on. And then we start to get a bigger picture of, well, maybe there's something actually else going on as to why you're reaching for alcohol, why you were reaching for drugs. Why was that the way that you were wanting to do that at the age of 12? And then start to understand, well, maybe we need to look at this. And often there's a diagnosis out of it. And so that's super important, which is where you come in, where I then signpost. So yeah, it's pre or post, it's so valuable.
I'm just thinking as well as you're talking there, just how important is do you run groups at all? Because I'm trying to think, a place where people can meet other ADHDers, if you want to call them that, who have also gone through the same journey as them, to feel that they have this tribe that they can relate to. Sometimes
I
you
know
just
what you
say
mean.
it feels
Yeah.
isolating.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm in a couple of different groups, which is really fascinating, but I don't run different groups right now, but it is something that I'm definitely thinking of in the clinic with how we would go about that and what would it look like, because obviously there's client confidentiality. Some people don't want to be talking in a group about things, but some people really do. So it's definitely something to consider for the future in the pipeline. One of the biggest needs that I see a lot of is parents' ADHD groups, where parents, mums in particular, feel like they're the only mum on the school gate that is absolutely dreading what that teacher is going to say at the end of the day, what's gone on, what's happened. And often I'm like, no, you are not alone, I can promise you. So that is a real need that I'm trying to look at, but also getting into the schools and trying to normalize the child's behavior, the symptoms, and encourage schools to get whatever specific training they can, different strategies. But funding and resources is always such an issue with the state school system at the moment, which is actually now exacerbated with the private school VAT. You can see I'm going
Yes.
off on a tangent again, Archie.
I know. I'm itching and resisting myself to go down discussing education right now.
Yes,
Honestly,
okay.
I was absolutely about to come back with something there, but I'll be pleased to bring you back to literally focus on that because I know it's a huge, huge topic, and a lot of parents, yeah, all of the things you just said there,
We need to do like
I
a
hear.
Jamie Oliver equivalent campaign on ADHD. You know how he's done it for health and nutrition and food?
Yeah.
And he's now actually doing one on dyslexia, which is really good. But we need to be doing it, taking it to the government, all of that kind of stuff.
I think it's been done. If you think about it, there's been this white
Has
paper
it?
published.
Has
Yeah, if
it?
you
What is
honestly,
the changes? We need to do
think
it again.
about what's her name? I've got a name, but she works for an organization called ADHD Action. Michelle, oh, don't quote me, but she's if you type ADHD Action on
Okay.
Google, she'll come up. She's very proactive, in particularly with all the things what you're saying there, advocacy, trying to push it to like the powers that be for them to hear, not just the education system, but just the whole what we're discussing with the waiting list, with the
Yeah,
GPs,
yeah.
the shared cares, and how the system is failing lots of children and young people and adults as well. So yeah, I think there's need to be more voices. That's what we're saying. ADHD Voices and another organization as well. So definitely, I think more voices needs to be heard. We need to bang that drum a bit louder. And it feels like we have been, but it's not been heard.
I know. What is happening? What are we doing
I
wrong? We need
know.
to be more reflective here.
We do. Honestly, we need a movement. We need to set it up. We need to be like in London with the placards,
I
literally.
mean, it probably won't be that hard because we're going to have a lot of vocal, spicy people behind us.
Of course, 100%. Do you remember when we had the shortage of medication? And I was saying that on this podcast. No one was literally like out there banging the doors. It felt like people just accepted it. Like, oh, okay, we just, yeah,
Yeah, we're going to
yeah,
do it. Let's do it. I
I
can
think we
feel
should do
it.
it. 100% we should do it. And I think, yeah, I like the passion you got there. All right. One more thing I'll just ask you. So for our listeners, so anyone who's either newly diagnosed or considering going down the ADHD assessment route, what message would you like to leave for them?
Oh, that's a good question. To take their time with it, take their time with how they're feeling post-diagnosis, take their time with pre-diagnosis thoughts. Why is it they're going down this route? And to consider really unpacking their journey, how they've got to this point. It's really individually led, isn't it? So some people are really keen for therapy, some might come really trepidatious, but it's a space where people can speak about whatever it is. So I think take their time with it is what I would say. give yourself a bit of a break and get some space.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. If people want to find out more about yourself and your services, how can they connect with you?
So I've actually just rebranded the clinic called the Mindful Clinic, which is themindfulclinic.co.uk.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's just happened over the summer.
Oh,
And that's where I've got some other therapists under my kind of brand in the building where we can offer EMDR, CBT, and these different groups that I want to be doing. So yeah, we're in Guildford, down the road from yourselves. So yeah, the mindfulclinic.co.uk, Maddie Patchett, it will all be there. And any hesitation or questions, just give us a call and we can speak around what it is that somebody might be looking for and get them the support that they need.
and obviously you work with adults and you work with parents, but you don't work with young people.
I don't work with young people, but I'm going to be working more so with family soon, or, to essentially be helping children. I'm not going to be working directly with children, but it's more of a systemic family approach to therapy, where a lot of ADHD stuff comes up with parents that are struggling with children's behaviors. I don't want to say parent coach, but it's as an observer coming in, observing the family, what's going on, how can the family improve communication to help facilitate that child's behavior, where are things maybe going a little bit wrong. So with families as well. Yeah.
That's good. So it's good to know that you've kind of expanded it. I know we touched on it last time when we spoke, when we met, but it's good to know that it's up and running, and certainly, we can utilize your services given that we're local to each other, and always nice to connect, particularly in this neurodiverse field. Clients want to feel, they can, they can see that they can be referred elsewhere, and it's not too far, particularly, with our proximity. We're on the corner from each other, and it's always helpful to know that you have other team members as well, because this is such a ADHD. It brings a lot of complexity with it, and there's a lot going on. There's a lot of dynamics that might need to be unpacked, and some of the things that we touched on here. So yes, it needs that multi kind of team approach.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what I want to do at the Mindful Clinic, where there is an in-house nutritionist, there is family therapy, because it's all part of one bigger picture. And I want to be able to ensure clients can cross-refer internally at the Mindful Clinic, where whatever it is they need, we can offer it to give them the best kind of support.
Excellent. Are you on social media?
Oh, social media. I'm there. Do I like it? No. Am I good at it? No. But you can I'm not very good at advertising for myself, am I, Archie? You're probably like, what are you doing? You need to pick yourself up. But
Come on, this is your pitch. This is your 2-minute pitch.
We've got it's called the Mindful Clinic. It's very small, but I'm not that big on social media. I prefer spending my time in the room thinking about client work. If there's anyone out there that wants to run a social media account for my clinic, send me an email.
Might just have one person I'm thinking right now as we're talking. So
you're joking. That would be fantastic. I find it, as an ADHDer, attention to detail, not my thing.
So yeah. I mean, they could do a bit of crosswork, and they could do a bit of work with us and a bit of work with you as well. So there you go.
Okay, here we
there you
go. Look at us.
There you go. Teamwork.
Ideas.
Absolutely. On the fly. That's good.
Love it. Okay. Because this is what I'm so passionate about, that the treatment there's a whole different avenue of the relational treatment missing from treatment. It's not just a a biological condition. It's relational. It's how we regulate ourselves and how we regulate ourselves in relation to others. And that is just really not emphasized with treatment plans.
Yeah. Mm. I mean, I value the whole role of like all of the things that we've been talking about, and I'm an advocate for that. And I think it doesn't get spoken about much. There's a lot of emphasis around coaches, and I love coaches; they're great. But psychotherapy, psychodynamic approach, particularly with something like ADHD, plays a huge part. Honestly,
Yeah,
yeah,
the coaching level is like sometimes CBT, depending on what the person's done before, where it can help with symptoms, but it can't really help with the understanding as to why I have these symptoms and what do they mean for me? How does it impact me? So that's why I think this kind of therapy, I mean, I'm going to be biased, but I think it's so robust.
Do you ever go to conferences or like
I get the
on
vibe,
ADHD?
Archie, that you love a conference because I was listening to your podcast and you were at this epic like world conference. Like, oh, he loves them. Conferences for me,
I
I'm like,
do.
oh gosh, there's so many people, there's so many lights, it's so busy. I don't do conferences as much, but I do lots of trainings and
Right.
networking. Tavistock and Portman, I've just
Yeah.
re-enrolled back there, which is that systemic therapy I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But I can come along to a conference if that's what you're suggesting.
Okay. I think you should. I suggest you think about it.
Okay, I will brace myself for that day.
I think you'll be fine. I can support you being there, and I can guide you through the whole
Madness.
chaos.
Yeah.
It's fine. Honestly, I value it. I mean, in amongst away from all of that noise and chaos and stuff,
Yeah.
it's I learn a lot. Honestly, I come back thinking, gosh, there's so much that we don't know about that's already out there. When I go to the States, for example, so I go every year for that annual conference. They're so far ahead than what we are in the UK. We're so
Yeah.
behind, honestly.
Wow.
Yep. It's so behind. So things like what we're talking about, like your role with people like yourself, you'd have so many people like you over there, and it's
Yeah.
readily available. It's not like you have to fish out and dig it out. And that's what I
Yeah.
find here. There's so many gaps. The medications that they have more options of medications. Not to say it's the whole great system. They have some challenges, in their system, but
Yeah.
just they invest a lot. I mean, they put a lot of money into the whole neurodiversity. They've got more coaches. There's more advocates. There's no shame about talking about the ADHD. It's very, particularly that workshop that we go to, not workshop, the conference itself.
Yeah.
It's you have celebrities, some people coming and being the keynote speakers.
Wow.
It's like a nice event. Like it's
Wow.
great. It's really good. I
Are they
wish we could
much
set
further
something up.
along with schooling and ADHD? Because it's interesting with the model of healthcare in the US, whereby you
Yeah,
obviously pay for it insurance wise, but
yeah,
a lot of challenges for people with ADHD is holding down a job for longer than 2 years
yeah.
and finances and life
Mm,
admin.
mm,
So I'm wondering how, there's all of this support in America, but if you don't
mm.
have the insurance, healthcare
I
insurance,
think that's the drawback, I suppose, if you want to call it that. That's the yeah, everything's all led by insurance. And
yeah.
and
And
it's not
you've got to
everyone who
have
can afford it.
your stuff in order to have health
Yeah,
insurance.
yeah,
And I
and
think
you do.
yeah,
Yeah. Unless you can afford privately, you can go privately as well.
yeah,
You got they've got the private sector system like what we got. In their private sector, they have more than what we have. So privately here, yes, you can, the coaches, they're not many. Like you, there's hardly any psychotherapists out there working in your diversity field. There you'd have more.
yeah.
It's so
Oh,
yeah,
well,
it's
send me the details of what it is that you go to, and I'll have a look. And then for next year as well, I'd be really keen for that.
yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like I need to recruit more of what I do in the clinic. I can't place
Well,
any more clients, to be honest. I can't.
yeah,
I just have to
yeah.
wait, and that's always plays on my mind.
As in, like, what, you got a backlog of clients? Really? Right.
Yeah.
Mm, that's good. You're busy.
It's good. I'm really busy, but
Yeah.
I think I just think about that client sitting and waiting and not getting the help that they need. So yeah, I need
That
to.
that's what I was thinking about. I mean, I don't mind doing it with you if you're up for it, but some sort of like workshop online, because we've done webinars. We've done like a one-off thing where we do a topic on like overwhelm, feeling like coping with burnout or something like that. Or we want to talk about, supporting a young person going through challenges in the education system and stuff. You can give them something whilst they're waiting, can't you? Because we have people waiting as well on our waiting list coming through the journey.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah,
really
it's
good
better than,
idea.
than yeah, we can organize something. If we feel, okay, you can come in and talk about A, B, C, D. At
Yeah,
least they're getting something there. It'll keep them
yeah,
going for a while.
that's really good. That's a really good
So, I
idea.
mean, we can brainstorm that. We can have another
We
chat.
can. It's the time for me
I
because
know.
you know, when we were talking before and you were saying, oh, I remember those days when it
Yeah,
was invoicing, marketing, I need another person really. Brilliant. All right, Archie, thank you so
good to
much.
see you,
Take
Maddie.
care. Yeah,
Take
you
care.
too. See
All
you
the
soon.
best. See you later. Bye
Bye.
bye. Bye bye.